Broadcasting live from Brooklyn, New York, Solutions Review is on location at MobileIron Live 2019. Brought to you by MobileIron.
We are here at MobileIron Live in Brooklyn, New York, and we are joined by someone who just came off the main stage, Dr. Chase Cunningham, Principal Analyst at Forrester Research. And honestly, I was saying to these guys, that was like the ice bucket challenge for security professionals. You literally took cold water and just dumped it on the whole crowd.
A little bit of reality, right? Yeah.
So let's, before we get into your subject matter, specifically the zero trust concept, let's talk about that, because what you just described was, I think, chilling for everybody. Yeah. And it really is it's a fact and something that everybody needs to recognize, and I think you did a great job of articulating that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I really try and play in the reality of the space, and I'm blessed because I've been kind of on the quote-unquote bad guy side of this thing, and I see how things work, and I always look at it from the perspective of, like, how would I cause a problem for them? And it's the simple stuff. People have been buying sexy and cool and, whiz-bang things, but it's if you put really good blocking and tackling together and you do it with a focus on the outcome and a plan, it makes a hell of a difference.
But you're really talking about a complete cultural change from what folks have been thinking in terms of security for a couple of decades.
Years,
yeah, right. And that cultural change is, in fact, sort of a cultural war internal to the enterprise, right? You have this natural friction between security and usability, I guess.
Well, and I think that's a problem that we're sort of starting to move past, is the old sort of days of security being obtrusive and really being something that held you back from performing what you were there for are starting to go away. Things like virtualization and some of these other new technologies and enabling the future of work are solving that issue. And good security is like magic. You don't really know you're operating in a secure fashion, but you certainly know when you aren't.
Well, and you had a very interesting slide that really broke it down into three very simple elements that made it simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lightweight, contextual, and focused on the end user.
Right.
And it's not hard to think of, okay, what security technologies that are out there could I employ that will allow me to operate in that manner? And the point about moving away from the perimeter is that the perimeter is an indefensible spot as far as just the grand scheme of how you do the enterprise security. You have to focus on where you can gain ground and control, and I can do that if I push the edge to my users and to their devices and that type of thing.
Well, and so you're really asking the enterprise to start to think about things in a fundamentally different way, and the way they have been thinking about it is very much through a collection of point solutions that they've cobbled together. And really, they're going to, at some point, need to take a step back and say, okay, let's throw all that in the dumpster.
Well, not even a lot of times, not even necessarily looking at it from like we gotta can everything, but stepping back and going, okay, if I accept the realities of where compromises occur and I can figure out what I actually have to defend to survive and grow, let's do that first. And I'm not saying ever that we shouldn't have all of those solutions at some manner, but what I'm saying is, from the strategy side, this is a combat environment, and if I'm in combat, you'd better believe I'm going to fight the way that I win, and I can't fight that grand battle when I don't even own the ground I'm standing on.
Well, and that is a very different approach, isn't it? I mean, it has been the path of least resistance internally for user adoption, to get folks to walk through these, passwords, multi-factor authentication, but you're really talking about a much different cultural approach.
And being able to make sure that your culture is aware that if you want to get that paycheck from that company has to operate in a secure fashion. And while I understand that it may make you bristle a bit, that I'm going to sort of do monitoring and that I may look at what's going on your endpoint or whatever, I'm not doing it because I really care about your personal life. I'm there to make sure that you're not ending my business. I won't allow you and your discomfort to be the reason that my company gets wrecked.
Well, and you have this perfect confluence of evolutions in terms of mobile devices and edge technology combining with massive amounts of data, increasingly sophisticated applications,
Yep.
and a security approach that is just desperately trying to keep pace.
Yeah, and it's hard to keep pace when you're trying to solve for everything all the time, but it's possible to keep pace when you solve for where the threat exists and then work your way to the other stuff later. You know, like I said in my session, the network, in my opinion, is contested space. I mean, where is a bad guy? Where do I have to be to cause problems? I have to be in the network, and it's okay if they're there as long as the stuff that matters is actually secured. You know, it's like if there was a grizzly bear running around my front yard, as long as I'm inside the house, I'm okay. I might be uncomfortable, but I'm okay that he's running around the yard. You know, I don't want him there.
So let's talk about zero trust because the term itself is part of that cultural change.
Yeah.
It's such a stark term.
Yeah.
There's no more
Zero, right?
Zero is a hard number.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and people bristle at it because they're like, wait, you mean it's just a human response? It's an emotional thing of like, wait, you mean you don't trust me? And it's like, well, no, actually, I don't. And it's also that I don't trust the way that we've architected things to operate in a secure fashion. And it, again, is something you have to remind people of like, don't take this personal. This is business. This is security. This is what we do to enable the future of where we're going. It's not about you. Like, as a human being, I trust you. We're good. Like, we're friends, whatever. But when it comes to my business and the way that I run things, I can go with zero trust because it's simple and it's concise, and I can tell everyone what that means in the technical context.
So what advice would you offer enterprise security professionals in terms of first steps toward a zero trust environment?
So I think the first thing that you should do is really say, do I have a close to bulletproof IAM and user sort of focused security practice? Because look at the history of exploitation, look at how bad guys compromise networks. It's via users, via bad passwords and those type of things. Take care of that first, and that's a pretty easy problem to solve. There are many ways to do it. We saw demonstrations today. And then next, kind of pick out which other piece of the framework which you think you can fix. Is it the cloud workload side, or is it the device side? Interestingly enough, most of the time if you're taking care of users and how they access networks, you're actually solving for the device at the same time. So it's a force multiplier type piece.
Well, and I read an article that you wrote recently that actually walked through the steps a reasonably small business could take to get pretty secure,
Yep.
and at least secure to your standards, which is high.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all that expensive. It's really just getting down to the brass tacks of it all and taking an honest look at what you need.
And it does take somebody in that organization, honestly, to take real ownership of this and stand up and say, this is our strategy, and no longer saying we're doing security, we're going to be compliant, we're going to, operate better, whatever. Like you wouldn't expect that to function for a business to grow in the context of revenue. They have a strategy. Why would that ever work in space like security? You get people to say, a security leader to stand up and say, we're going to be a zero trust enabled environment, or this is a zero trust infrastructure, and then you can work around that.
Well, this has been very helpful. We thank you very much for swinging by. I can't emphasize enough how important this is, and if you really want to understand what you're up against, you have to follow Chase, because he really knows how to dial in the fear, which is what you should have right now.
Keep it simple and bring the reality,
Great. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.